the Boston College Eagles have been very active in the transfer portal. They're not done yet. And I'm looking at a new offer that Boston College just made this weekend. And I'm going to talk about why this is showcasing why the Eagles could be making some adjustments to their secondary. You're going to want to hear my thoughts on this, my recap of BC's loss to Syracuse in basketball, and we're going to do some New Year's predictions for the upcoming year. All of this and more on today's Locked On BC.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, happy New Year's and welcome. This is AJ Black. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so folks, happy New Year's Eve. I'm recording this at home. I'm not going out on New Year's Eve because I've got COVID again. Woo, fun. So I'm back home and I'm recording. I thought this would be a great time to catch up with all of you other folks out there who are ready to talk Boston College, because we are the only Boston College podcast that does this every single day. And I was going to start off with basketball, but you know what? Let's get into football, because there's some interesting news going around in terms of the transfer portal. As we've said on this podcast before, the Eagles have landed 7 transfers in the portal. They have, a wide variety, wide receivers, offensive line, but they have 3 defensive backs. They landed Victor Nelson Jr., who we're trying to get on the show, hopefully, from LIU, who's a safety, Alex Washington, a quarterback from Harvard, and Kari Johnson of Arkansas. And the thoughts about this, when I'm looking at what Boston College is doing, it's interesting because, yes, the safety position specifically, BC needed to beef up. You've got some guys coming back like Cole Batson, who I thought showed some oomph this last year when he was put in after Jason Maitre had to push over to cornerback. And Jaden Woodbay, he's going to the NFL draft. So BC had to get some depth there. But the cornerback position itself was also interesting because I'm looking at what BC is doing. And I talked to Mitch Wolf, who is our staff writer over at Eagle Insider, and the overall theme, the theme that's going around in terms of where BC is going here is length. And this is what Jeff Hafley preached in his signing day press conference. He was going for length, and he did the same thing in the transfer portal. Now you take Jaden Woodbay and Jason Maitre. Jason Maitre was 5'10". He did what he could. He was a violent player. He did a nice job. And by the way, he just committed. He decommitted from Liberty and recommitted to Wisconsin. So good luck to Jason as he finds his new job. But both Woodbay and Maitre were 6 feet or lower. Victor Nelson is 6'2", and this new offer is 6. I believe he's 6'3". He could be 6'4" if I just pull up his stats. 6'3" or 6'4". Okay. His name is Jireh Wilson, and he's from our favorite school, the school that cried about us not playing them last year in the bowl after BC got nailed with COVID. ECU. He's a starter. He's played a ton of games. So let me read you a quick paragraph from Hoist the Colors on 247. East Carolina has lost one of its best defensive backs to the transfer portal in the form of redshirt junior safety Jireh Wilson. The 6'3", 250-pounder has floated between safety and Sam linebacker the last 3 years in ECU's defensive scheme, playing a key role in both capacities. Wilson, whose career started in 2018, has racked up 190 tackles, 16 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks to go along with 4 picks, 3 fumble recoveries, and 3 forced fumbles. He's been a starter the last 3 seasons. He also has the third highest defensive grade on ECU's defense. With 508 snaps, he had a 68.6 defensive grade, a 77.3 mark in run defense, 73.5 in tackling grade, and a 62.3 mark in coverage. So, again, this is another defensive player that has a lot of experience. Again, when you're looking at the guys that BC's brought in, I see length and I see experience. That's perfect. That's what BC needs. You do not. I stand firmly with my belief that, yes, you can get guys from Power 5 conferences, but if they haven't played all that much, they're not any different than what you have on your roster right now in terms of depth. If you're going for it, if you're going to try to take that next step and you are actually using the transfer portal to hopefully benefit you next year, you need to get guys that are proven now. And whether they play in the Ivy League, whether they play in NEC, which I believe is where LIU plays in, or the SEC, or in this one, the AAC, all four of these guys in their secondary have length. And, I'm going to bring Mitch back on in a couple days to talk about his thoughts on this defense, because he has a very interesting thought of how Jeff Hafley's establishing this defense. But I've always thought that Jeff Hafley wanted big guys in the secondary, guys with length, guys that remind you of the Seattle Seahawks defenses of old, guys that, can match ups against those bigger wide receivers in the ACC, the A.T. Perrys some of those other big wide receivers that are out there. These guys that BC are bringing in, both in the transfer portal and recruiting, are hitting on that. And so I think it's interesting that they're doing that. Now, that's not to say that they're changing up everything on their roster. Josh DeBerry and Elijah Jones are both going to play a massive role in this on this roster. They're going to be 2-year starting wide receivers. I mean, two starting defensive backs next year. You're going to have Josh DeBerry in the nickel, and you're going to have outside Elijah Jones, who I think has really grown as a cornerback. He's become even better as the year went on. So you have that, but then you surround it with strength and length, and I think that's going to really make Boston College, their secondary, look a little different. And I think that's a good thing because you don't want to change too much. The secondary has played relatively well in years past, but if Tem Lokabu, defensive coordinator, and Jeff Hafley really want to get this defense in the image of what they have always thought it should be, then guys like Jireh Wilson from ECU are going to hit that really well. Now, we'll have to wait to see if BC gets Wilson, because I'm sure a guy with that kind of pedigree and who's played a lot is going to have a list of suitors, but it's definitely something worth watching. Now, in a moment, I'm going to get into the basketball game and get into some of the other active games that were going on this weekend and give you some heads up on things that are going on for BC sports throughout the weekend. So make sure you do not miss that. Now, you're with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you'll get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill somebody. Everyone knows about the risk of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. All right, Locked On BC, AJ Black here. And Saturday had a big game for Boston College against their arch rivals, the Syracuse Orange, team that has been beating BC pretty regularly as of late. You're heading off to the JMA Wireless Dome, which sounds so weird. I mean, if you're like me, you've lived with that being the Carrier Dome your entire life. The fact that it has a different name now, I can't get used to that. I can't. So this game had one big feature, I think, that is a lot of folks have been waiting for. And that is the return of center Quinten Post. Post had missed all the games up until Saturday's matchup with Syracuse with a foot injury. And his missing him clearly was a big deal because BC doesn't have a true center that's ready to play with like Post can. You have Armani Mighty, but he's not ready. You've seen him play. He's got sparks here and there, but he needs to develop. He needs to have that moment to develop like Devin McLaughlin did last year. But you head to Syracuse, and BC starts off looking really good. They come out to a 13-6 lead. Makai Ashton Langford has some really nice shots. But as they start to build a lead, you see Syracuse start off cold, and you're waiting for them to start hitting their shots. It feels like Jim Boeheim has, good interior guys that can play. So Jesse Edwards, but they always seem to have an outside shooter or a couple outside shooters. And it was Joe Girard. He's been the heel in BC's side for years. But he hit some big shots, and they pulled away in the first half to a 9-point lead. You think the game's over, right? You think that BC is going to fall apart, but they come back. And that was kind of the theme of this game, was that BC, as much as they kept falling behind, they kept going back and getting into this game. And that continued until about the 10-minute mark, when Syracuse basically never missed a shot for the rest of the game. I'm just being sarcastic, but they outscored BC by 15 over the last 10 minutes, and that was it. So what happened? What was going on in this game that caused BC to lose? First of all, they were getting out rebounded. Syracuse blasted them in the paint, which is not good to see when you have Quinten Post, who, to be fair, only played 16 minutes, but there were many drives that ended with Syracuse getting extra chances because of offensive rebounds. They really dominated on that part. BC's shooting, again, they were shooting Mekhi Ashton-Langford was shooting well from the outside, but it floors me. I guess as a college basketball fan and a fan of basketball in general, to watch a team not have any clue how to shoot a 3-pointer, it floors me. That BC is one of the worst, and it seems like such a valuable skill in basketball, and they don't have it. And it ended up costing them. It did. In the end, there was a whole bunch of other things, but near the end, their offense just kind of, fell off the rails, and the zone kind of kicked in and kicked their butts. But, I didn't expect BC to win this game. I was hoping they would cover. It was a 9.5-point spread. When you're playing a better team, that's, sometimes you just hope that's what happens. And then this game, it didn't. But it was nice to see Post back. He played off the bench, and after the game, Earl Grant was talking about how he's, felt good, and that's great, because they're going to need him. They're going to definitely need him, because he does a lot with passing and getting things inside that BC sorely lacks when they throw like TJ Bickerstaff or CJ Penna out there. He's a much bigger guy that takes up a big amount of space and can help those guards get more open looks. So hopefully, kind of like what they did with Prince Aligbe, they're going to start to ratchet up his playing time, because really, I think Earl Grant needs to figure out his starting 5, because the starting 5 he's playing out there right now, I don't think is the best one that they should be going with. Just from my perspective, and again, everyone has their own perspective, right? Jaden Zachary should be out there. He had a really bad game, but that's not the point. But he should be out there with Mekhi Ashton-Langford as the two guards. Then you need to put Post out there, and I think you need Devin McLaughlin, and then Prince Aligbe. Those should be your starting 5. DeMar Langford has struggled a lot this year. I think in terms of like tough years, he's had the toughest of anyone. He just doesn't look confident anymore. And it's been tough. And I think he needs to be a guy that comes off the bench until he figures that out, because right now he's become a liability a bit. And, you can't put him out there getting starter minutes if he's having such difficulty, maintaining the ball and turning it over. So that's kind of my thoughts. I don't know. Who do you think should be the starting 5 for BC? Leave it in the comment section. Love to hear what you have to say. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page right there. You're going to get your daily BC news sent directly to your feed. You can comment. You can talk to other BC fans. It's great. We do this 5 days a week. This last week has been kind of crazy because it's my vacation week. So I've been trying to get episodes out from a ski lodge. Now I'm sick, but it's okay. I can handle this. I don't feel great. I sound congested. I feel great. But we have a lot to talk about, because on Tuesday, BC plays Notre Dame, but there's also some other big games, and Mark Falzone brings up a great one, and I want to make sure that this gets up there. Don't forget to give a nice plug to the women's basketball game at Notre Dame tomorrow at noon on ACC Network. Yeah, if you haven't got in on the women's basketball team again, Joanna McNamee is a special coach. As I said it during our awards show earlier this week. If you haven't checked that out, check out the YouTube feed. Joanna McNamee has done a lot with a very little. And she has, she lost a ton of talent in the transfer portal and just reloaded. And this team is really good. Now, Notre Dame is always a good team. This should be a fun matchup on Sunday. So if you're nursing a New Year's hangover, or you're just stuck at home, or you just want to watch some sports, check out the women's basketball team. I think it'll be a fun matchup on Sunday. So yeah, thank you, Mark, for bringing that up. So one last game that came up this weekend, actually two games, was BC played Arizona State I didn't watch the game, so I'm going to probably screw it up, but I could not get over the name of the place they play at. It looked to me that it was called the Mullet Center. Yeah, like mullet, like the haircut, short on the side, party in the back. It looked like the Mullet Center to me. BC goes out and wins pretty easily. I think it was 5-2 or 5-3 on Friday, and then loses 2-1 on Saturday, excuse me. So BC goes 1-1 against Arizona State, who I believe is one of the lower ranked teams in college hockey. So not a good weekend for Greg Brown and his team, but that's kind of that. Now, in a moment, we're going to wrap things up. I want to give you some New Year's resolutions. New Year's predictions for BC sports. I'm going to give you a couple that are on the top of my head right now that I have for the upcoming year. You're going to want to hear my thoughts on that in just a moment. Now, if you've not done so already, make sure to subscribe to the Locked On ACC podcast with Candace Cooper. Right now, she is co-hosting with the Locked On NC State host, and they are having some great episodes talking about the transfer portal, college football, college basketball, everything in between. Find Locked On ACC wherever you get your podcasts. All right. Locked On BC, AJ Black here. This is our last episode of the 2022 year. And I want to thank each and every one of you, first of all, for making Locked On BC your first listen to every day. And I know many of you have reached out to me to say, like, you love listening to me on your commutes, and that you love getting into our podcast because you can't deal with BC sports, but I've made it interesting for you. I thank you, each and every one of you. We've got some really good things coming up. I think we're going to have some interviews coming up as well with some big names in the BC community that hopefully you're going to enjoy. But I wanted to do some prediction time here, and I want to look ahead to the upcoming 2023 year. And I'm going to say that this is, from now until December 31st. So I won't be able to tell you if like BC men's basketball makes the tournament next year, but I can tell you how they start next year. So let's start with football. My prediction, and I've got my haters out there that listen to this podcast and they know what I'm going to say, is that BC makes a bowl next year. However, I think BC will be good enough to make a bowl, which could be 7-5 now based on what some of the new changes they're thinking of making. But I get the feeling that BC is going to end up in a bowl no one's going to care about. And the one that keeps sticking out to me is the Fenway Bowl, which I know no one wants to go to. But I think BC football is going to figure a few things out this year. Will it be enough to make folks happy with Jeff Hafley? I'm not sure that's going to be the case. I still think that the offensive line right now has too many question marks. They'll be better, but they're not going to be able to beat teams that are good. That being said, this team has 4 on paper bad out-of-conference schedule teams. And I'm not going to crap on them because we just saw what UConn and Rutgers did to BC last year. But if BC plays their cards right, they get their offensive line going, I think they can make a bowl. And I think it'll be a bowl that no one's going to be happy about. So there's my thoughts there. That's my prediction for BC football. I'm also going to predict that Jeff Hafley survives next year. I'm going to say that he does enough to hold his job. I think he will still be on a very hot seat, but he'll do enough to show improvement with the Boston College Athletic Department, who doesn't like to do much. They're going to let him keep his job for one more year. So that's my prediction on Jeff Hafley. In addition, basketball. Right now, I think they're going to turn things around. I see BC basketball, men's basketball, grabbing at least another 2 big wins by the end of this year. A ranked team, a good team like Syracuse at home. I see at least 2 or 3 big wins coming up. That being said, I think they're going to make the ACC tournament, and I think they're going to win at least 2 rounds. They will not make the NIT. They will not make the NCAA tournament. That's my prediction for men's basketball. That being said, going into next year, I think men's basketball is going to figure things out. I think while football might take a step in the right direction, I think men's basketball is going to start to figure things out in their out of conference schedule in that beginning of the year type of situation where we won't have as many WTF losses that we had in 2022. That's my predictions for basketball. I also predict for basketball that one of the starters on this team will hit the transfer portal. I think it's logical to think that not everyone on this roster is going to stay. And I don't want to say who it's going to be, but I'm going to guess it's one of the guards. And I think they will hit the transfer portal at the end of this year. All right. Now, our last one, and I'll let you guys get off because I want to go watch the Georgia game right now and see how because that TCU with Michigan game, that game was crack. That game was great to watch, and I don't want to miss that. Now, for BC Athletics, what is going to happen in terms of big overall pictures? All of those other predictions I made, I'm going to go with, and I believe his name was Martin Artest Jones on Twitter, who already predicted that Father Leahy is going to retire. I'm going to follow up and say I agree with him that Father Leahy is going to retire. And my hope is that BC finds a president that really pushes for some changes in the way that athletics sees basketball and football and some of the bigger programs on campus. So I'm predicting that Father Leahy is going to retire. All right. So this is AJ Black. Happy New Year's to you and yours. I hope you all have a great day. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk some more transfer portal news. We'll talk football and anything else that pops up in the news in the next 24 hours. You're not going to want to miss it. Thank you all for listening. Make sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcast or on YouTube. And we'll see you again soon. Take care.